All right, so this is the first in a series of videos showing my process working through this week's assignment, Interact with Code. The theme that I'm choosing from the list is visibility and invisibility. So I wanted to use my work from last week's assignment as a jumping off point and kind of build on that. And I'm planning to do some modifications to my imagery in terms of adjusting the image hierarchy, the positive negative space, zones of recession. So just starting off here in Illustrator, building out a second image. And this one is going to be myself as a skeleton. And my goal here, or at least, in terms of what I'm planning on, is to have some interaction that lets me sort of move back and forth between different self-portraits of myself, living and dead. And to have that respond to the way that the user or the audience member is touching the screen. And so I want to have a little bit of motion in the sketch to have the eyeballs follow where the touch point is on the screen. And then also have some interaction based on how many fingers are touching the screen. So you can see here, I'm just building up a second composition. Of course, just like last time, you don't have to work this way. I find it really fluid and easy to work in Illustrator and sketch things out. And that is a helpful framework for me jumping into code. Of course, you could do this by hand. Of course, you could do this just off of your head completely in the code. So don't feel like this is the one exact way to do things. Often, also while I'm working, I'll bring up reference images and kind of use that to tweak the direction of my images. Obviously here, this is fairly stylized. So just making some adjustments to my composition, making sure that I'm saving in the right place, using transparency, using layering, and sort of planning ahead so that this is going to be as easy as possible to translate into code using the most basic shapes I possibly can, things like rounded rectangles, ellipses, a few sort of custom Bezier curves that I've drawn with the pen tool. But you get the idea, just using layering to my advantage and getting the composition to sort of stack up the way that I want it to. A couple places that I had to do a little bit of extra work here are with the shirt. So to get the layering correct, I actually had to turn that into a compound shape. So almost using that collar shape as a cookie cutter to cut out the sort of neck hole. So a little bit more complicated than the self-portrait of myself as a living human, but not too bad. And I think that should be pretty easy to translate into code. And so you can see here, I'm just experimenting with different stroke weights, different fill and stroke colors. So again, nice fluid way to sort of build out and quickly test a composition, make aesthetic choices that I can then translate into code. And I find this a little bit quicker and easier than having to completely guess and check just in the code side of things. So in the end, I just decided to sort of simplify the collarbone or the clavicle and the ribs because those are mostly getting hidden by the shirt anyway. And then for the teeth, I had to do a little bit of creative problem solving. So you can see here, I'm making this ellipse shape that is in red for visibility to cover over the parts of the teeth that are overlapping outside the mouth. And in Illustrator, that's something we would do probably with a clipping mask. But since we don't have that feature in P5, we have to sort of fudge it a little bit. So there I go, sort of flipping back and forth between the two images. So again, that's giving me a chance to sort of prototype what I'd like the interaction to look like when I get it into the code. And then it's going to be on me to sort of set up the code responses to things like touching on the screen to get that to work.